Hi, everyone. It's Emil. It's Emil Guillermo. Emil Amok185. Welcome to our program. This is Emil Amok's Takeout. Our takes on all things considerable. I mean, we're here every Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific live. As I like to say, be here. Bang the gong now. I'm standing here in my Amok closet next to my authentic bronze gong. You're catching us live on perhaps emilguillermo.media on Facebook. Are you calling it Meta now? I don't call it Meta. It's Facebook. And I'm not using the, I guess that's the name to make it sound better than it is. Oh, it's Meta. No, it's the same old Facebook. Oh, no. It's Meta. No. It's Facebook. Yeah, it's Facebook. emilguillermo.media at Facebook. That's where you're seeing this live. You can also see all our past shows on that live page on emilguillermo.media or on Facebook Watch, or maybe you're catching us on YouTube, our fledgling YouTube channel. There's no one on our YouTube channel. People say, Emil, is this true? There's no one watching you? No, there's someone out there somewhere. Or maybe you're watching us on Emil Amok on Twitter at Emil Amok, EMILAMOK, where you can, use the Twitter browser left over from Periscope, I guess, to see our show. It's not bad, and you see it live, but later on you can see it recorded. This is show 185. Yes, we've done 185 of these. I've been a talk show host, and I'm copping to it. I'm a monologist. I love Gene Shepard. I only listened to him a couple of times because I was on the West Coast. I've heard him, of course, now on the radio or, over the internet. But yeah, I was a big Gene Shepard fan. He was a monologist, and that's what we do. We talk about the things that are important. We tell stories about the things that are important in our day. And I do this for the AAPI and the AAXs. I call this the micro talk show of the AAPI and the AAXs. Because when do you have talk shows that talk about us? I mean, you can be outside of the AAPI and the AAXs and you can still understand what I'm talking about because I'm talking in English. In that case, you are a member of the ALLs, all's the rest of you, and welcome to the show. Like I said, I mean, we're talking about things that mean something, but from an Asian American perspective. I mean, first of all, here is, if you want to talk about the big Asian American story, the biggest Asian American story of the last, but aside from the spot news, and we will get to Waukesha and Kenosha and us, because it's serious. And he wasn't a first responder, but he was one of the first eyewitnesses, is Angelito Tenorio, who was running for treasurer of the state of Wisconsin. He's a Filipino American running for treasurer. He was in a parade, right, in Waukesha, going down Main Street, and suddenly he's a witness. He's a public official, an alderman in nearby West Allis, and he's thrust into reporting to the world because he's on NewYorkTimes.com, he's on CNN, he's talking about what he saw. I'll talk about what he saw. It's in my column on the Inquirer.net, where I talk about Waukesha. I'll talk about Kenosha too, and that column's on the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund. So all that's coming up. But I want to talk about Simu Liu. I have not seen Shang-Chi yet. I am one of those Asians who, I like the idea of Simu Liu. I like the idea of Shang-Chi being the #1 movie for so long. And I'm glad that everyone else's money is going into Marvel's pockets. But I just am not ready to go into a theater. Not ready to see a big. I'll go into a theater to see a small film that no one goes to, like little artsy film, But I would much rather see it on. I guess it's on Disney Plus or something. So I'll see it. But I honor Simu. I think he's great. He's an Asian Canadian. Does that matter? Well, he's not an Asian American. He's an Asian in a white culture. Okay, technically North America, so an Asian North American. I'll buy that. So I honor Simu. I thought he was great on Saturday Night Live. And for all that I have criticized Saturday Night Live in my long commentary career as a columnist, not just at the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, but also at Asian Week and all the other ethnic publications, whenever they would do something like Diss an Asian or, show an Asian in some non complimentary or show an Asian in a way that was just stereotypical, I was always first to criticize SNL. I mean, they hired Shane Gillis, right? They hired him and they knew what he had done. Okay, quickly. They got rid of him. Okay, so slight applause there. But they were tone deaf and did not understand what they were doing until people made noise on the internet and all over the place, because people they're recognizing that the world is changing. Mind you, that show has been on what? I don't know how many years, 40 years, 30 years. I mean, a long time, since the 70s. And I knew one of the producers, several of the writers. I wasn't in communication with them about these specific things. I mean, they just did their thing, and I criticized them, through my columns. But it says something when they bring on Simu to host. He was like, I think he was it's not the first time an Asian American has hosted, but it was a big deal that he hosted. It was the first time that there was an Asian American host and an Asian American cast member, Bowen Yang. So that was a kind of interesting thing. And they did a nice little skit about being a first. And I will talk about that. But here's where we must applaud Saturday Night Live. It took a while, but they did something, and look what happens. Asian Americans are making a difference in film, making a difference in terms of representation in the pop culture. Here's the number. I mean, Shang-Chi was like number one for a long time. Can't ignore Shang-Chi. People know him. People know who the Marvel character is. So in some ways, Saturday Night Live wasn't doing anything different. Now, they're always trying to keep on top of the trend. But when it's Asian, we got to give them some applause that it happened. Because I can look back at all the things I've written about Saturday Night Live over just my 10 years, 11 years writing for ALDEF, and not how many negative things have I said about Saturday Night Live. And I like the show. I want it to get better. It's getting better. And last weekend's show, besides Simu Liu and Bowen Yang, they had a number of comments about animal rights and veganism, Mother Earth going on Weekend Update. A number of comments that indicated they're aware. They're much more aware than they used to be. And now they're aware, and I think everyone else is, of Asian Americans in pop culture. Much more so because of Simu. I mean, they could have also done it with Crazy Rich Asians, but Crazy Rich Marvel characters, I think maybe a slightly bigger audience. Although Crazy Rich Asians was a big audience. Anyway, congratulations to Simu, an Asian North American, an Asian Canadian. And the bit they did with Bo and Yang is funny, right? I mean, it's funny because Asian Americans have to mark milestones about being the first because we are invisible. When you are invisible, it's a big deal when you're first, right? So, Lou, Marvel's first Asian superhero, big deal. It's a big deal. For Bo and Yang, first Chinese American Saturday Night Live cast member, it's a big deal. Although I think Yang technically, he may have gotten a green card, but I think he's Chinese Australian. But like I said, Shang-Chi star, Emmy-nominated cast member together, it's a first. It's a cultural first, and we got to mark those as Asian Americans. I mean, it's just not marking just the bad stuff that happens. We got to mark the good stuff. And this was a milestone. And they, of course, make fun of it, about the first Asian honors. Like Simu Liu was they said to be the first Asian man to deadpan on Splash Mountain. I mean, and then Yang brought up his Good Asian Award from the state of Michigan. You know what I mean. If you're Asian American and you live in areas where there are so few, that you do a good thing and they give you a plaque. They give you a certificate. You are a role model. You're a role model for all the other Asians who don't say anything or don't do anything. So it's kind of satirical because it's true and it's real. I mean, I grew up in San Francisco. Oh, all the Asians are here in California, right? I go off to Boston and hardly any Asians. Now look, 45 years later, now there's a mayor, an Asian American mayor of Boston. I go to Texas. When I went to Texas in the 70s, Asians, it wasn't until the quote unquote boat people from Vietnam came through and they found themselves in the Gulf. That's when they came to Texas. And now look at China. I was in Houston, Texas when there was just like 2 blocks of Chinatown in the downtown area. And now in Houston, it's practically a whole subdivision, a whole town. Bel Air, around Bel Air and Alief around there. And when I was there in the 70s, like I said, Chinatown was like 2 blocks. And the Chinese food wasn't that good. Made me hanker for San Francisco's Chinatown. We have come a long way. But I know back when I was in Texas, Asian American first. I was the first Asian American rock and roll DJ on KLOL Houston. I was the first Asian American to play the Ramones on national radio. I mean, I could play that first thing because it's true. When most Asian Americans just sat back and did nothing or were just trying to survive, right? Not trying to be part of the greater culture. If you did something and made a splash in your community, let alone nationwide, you're a first. And every one of us has some kind of first we can be proud of. So when Simu Liu and Bo and Yang are talking about, hey, I'm the first to deadpan on Splash Mountain, they're making fun of it. But you know what? It's real. Because when you're invisible, you take your first seriously. The first matter. I know people who know me and read me and on Asian Week or on ALDEF, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, or on Inquirer and Filipino Inquirer.net for the Philippine media. You know, I like to talk about being the first Asian American male to host a national news show. First Asian American, that would be Connie Chung, CBS Evening News. But I was the first Asian American male when I hosted All Things Considered, 1989. Oh, Emil, that doesn't count. That doesn't matter for any. Yes, it does. Where were we before then? Why weren't we doing more before then? Because of discrimination. Because we were artificially kept down. That's why when you make a breakthrough, you celebrate those breakthroughs. The breakthroughs make a difference. So that's the positive news for today. Because as you know, this is a strange day. And I mentioned Waukesha. I mentioned Waukegan. If you thought maybe there'd be solace over the, on the weekend, after the shock of what America has become from what happened in Kenosha, well, you're wrong. There were Waukesha, 60 miles north of Kenosha, the scene of last week's verdict of the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, comes this tragedy out of the blue. So it makes you wonder, where is this country going? In America, the family car can be weaponized to wreak havoc just like that. A speeding red SUV drove parallel to the marchers in a parade on Main Street, and then it barreled into a marching band. And now 5 people are dead, at least 40 are injured. And I wrote my column for the Inquirer.net. I didn't know they have now identified the person of interest. Apparently, it's a 39-year-old African American. He has a record. It's not clear whether he was fleeing something, but apparently he was caught in traffic. I mean, it just doesn't make sense why he would at some point step on it and barrel into a crowd, barrel into the marchers in the parade. So we'll wait and see. They've had when I wrote my piece, there were like just 20 people identified as either wounded or killed. It's now 5 people dead and 40 injured, including some children who are critical. But among the dead, who loves a parade? Old people love a parade. I say that as a fellow old person. And I only like parades marginally. But there they were. I mean, this is a big deal in Main Street in Waukesha. A holiday parade. Like I said, when I heard it, I said, what is this country coming to? And one of the key eyewitnesses was an American Filipino guy, Angelito Tenorio. He's an alderman in West Allis. He's a Democratic candidate for state treasurer. He had just finished marching in the parade, and then he heard the driver throttle up. And he goes on record, CNN, New York Times. He says, quote, when I saw the vehicle speed and when I heard that loud bang, I was in shock. I'm still a bit shaken. A lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear, a lot of scaredness for me and my family when this was all occurring. And he just sees what people in chaos, first responders coming in, administering to the people. And the takeaway really is this is Main Street America. This is Main Street as it gets. And now you don't need a gun to terrorize the public. I mean, it's not an international act of terror. It appears from reports. The police are tight-lipped, but subsequent or prior to this, a number of news organizations have done stories about how vehicles have been used as weapons. And at the time when I wrote this, I'm just trying to contemplate the idea. What kind of evil tries to upset a holiday parade? What kind of evil is at play when someone decides to weaponize a family SUV on a Sunday afternoon? That's America right now. So we'll be following what happens to the people. We'll be following what happens to, the people who are recovering. Of course, we're thinking about them. And, the person they have, the person of interest, we'll see what more is said and what he contributes, how much he cooperates. He's not being called a suspect yet, I don't think. But like I said, we were looking for this week, or at least I was looking for a break, trying to figure out how do we deal with the Rittenhouse verdict, the Kenosha embarrassment. Like I said, it's like 60 miles away from Waukesha. The two are not related, although they are kind of in a way. Just in terms of, in general, about where America is mentally. I mean, I think we better start paying attention to this change that's happening in America because it's going to affect everyone on the wrong side of a gun. We live in a gun culture. And, for AAPIs, this is a strange time because there have been instances, more than 9,000 instances of racial animus during the pandemic, including gun deaths. So 5 counts, Rittenhouse verdicts. It sounds the general alarm, right? First degree murder, reckless endangerment, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. To all 5 counts, Kyle Rittenhouse is not guilty. And the bottom line is, a white vigilante in 2021 can do as he or she pleases in America. And the message to people of color, as well as the message to all white vigilantes, past, present, and future, hate is defensible in a court of law. I mean, if you're AAPI, you know this to be true. The killing of 6 Korean Americans in Atlanta this year, just an update of what we know about white vigilantes. You can go back 155 years to San Jose, where Chinese were forced out of their Chinatown in 5 separate instances, starting in 1866. 1871 in LA, a mob of 500 whites attacked and massacred 19 in Chinatown. 1877, a mob waged a 3-day riot of ethnic violence against Chinese immigrants. 1930, white mobs attacked Filipino workers in Watsonville. One famously killed, Fermin Tobera. And we're just beginning now to be conscious of these historical acts. Now, this is not critical race theory, mind you. This is just history. This is how white vigilantes have treated Asian Americans. I don't have to go into how white vigilantes have treated the black community and the indigenous community. Would you count Andrew Jackson as a white vigilante? Not when he's in charge. Just saying. This is what we're seeing. We're seeing these cities I talked about begin to apologize for these actions. San Jose did earlier this year for what they called acts of fundamental injustice, terror, cruelty, and brutality. And frankly, it's a good trend that people are apologizing, cities are apologizing. But all it takes is one Rittenhouse trial to negate any number of apologies. So, look, there were some problems with the case, the prosecution, problems with the trial judge, problems all over. Bruce Schroeder, right, saying, hey, don't call the actual victims victims. It's clear, just as the jury saw it, the victim was not the people who were killed. The victim was Kyle Rittenhouse, the baby-faced Avenger, protector of abandoned buildings, who masqueraded as an EMT while brandishing the long gun, a long gun that he could legally carry as an underage minor. It wasn't as long as the longest gun, but it was long enough so they could throw out that charge about being a minor with a weapon. But there he was with his loaded AR-15. And I saw people, from the video that I saw people looking at Rittenhouse armed with a weapon, and the people were trying to be heroic by disarming him or attempting to. So it's unfortunate. I mean, of course, if you heard show 184, I talked to Professor Dan Gonzalez, and he said, look, Emil, the legal questions are very narrow when it comes to homicide or reckless endangerment. And the jury didn't have to consider things like, well, why was Rittenhouse out there in the first place? Who invited him? Or even the propriety of a 17-year-old with an AR-15 taking the law into his own hands. That was not the issue. The issue was simply self-defense. And when one of the living victims, I call them, one of the guys who lived, who was shot, Gage Grosskreutz, when he said he pointed a gun at Rittenhouse, it was kind of a signal that, well, there's your reasonable doubt. Can't convict Kyle Rittenhouse. So here's the thing. We are going to see more of these. In America's gun culture, we're going to see more of these kind of cases. And self-defense is going to be used as hate disguised as self-defense. That's what we're going to have to deal with from here on. I just think also that there's going to be a lot of confusion. Look at how people try to understand that drone video that showed Rittenhouse on the run, people going after him. Were they going after him? Were they trying to disarm him? Was he trying to shoot them? We are looking at this drone video trying to figure out what's going on. And sometimes the only thing we have is our sense of stereotype. Here's a guy with a gun. Right-wing gun nut? Oh, how about these other guys? Here's a skateboarder coming at me. I mean, I have no doubt Rittenhouse was scared, but he kind of asked for it in some ways. When he acted as he did with an armed weapon walking around in Kenosha. And we will never hear from the man that he killed because the jury bought the self-defense argument. But now I wonder, people said, well, what if You know, if Rittenhouse were black, someone just would have shot him. Going on a stereotype. How about this? How about, I like to do the substitution game to see, well, what would have happened? What would happen if Rittenhouse saw an Asian American? I mean, if you're Asian American, you're listening to this, you get stereotyped. In a situation where there could be violence, when tempers flare up, they see an Asian, do they think that you know martial arts? Does it make that person feel inadequate and endangered? Do they use that then as an excuse to come at you with more violence, to come at you in a self-defense posture because they were fearful of you? Will they be somehow triggered? I mean, that's what we got to worry about. What about our stereotype triggers people to do what they shouldn't do? That's when we'll see Rittenhouse, the sequel. Because this kind of thing is going to become commonplace. I mean, stereotyping is ignorant. But of course, ignorance prevails when juries give shooters like Rittenhouse the benefit of the doubt. Ignorance promotes fear. And that's at the base of this entire Rittenhouse defense, and it's what got him off. He was fearful. Fearful of what? We're Americans. We're innocent. He's playing with some kind of stereotypical view in his head about who we are. And instead of talking first, he shoots first. So in some ways, the legal system did us no favors. We're going to have more proclamations of self-defense in the future. In a gun-toting society, it's going to happen. Especially when, people shoot first and ask questions later. Expect it. But it makes me wonder about this country. Like, where are we now? We're in a country where we have, last week, we had GOP leader, Representative Paul Gosar. I call him a leader because, he's a member of Congress. He's got more GOP votes in Arizona. That makes him a leader. He does an anime video takeoff showing himself killing Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and threatening Joe Biden, and he calls it a joke. It's no joke. But this is the country we live in. The vote to condemn Gosar wasn't unanimous. It was 223 to 207. And that's really how close this country is to a moral collapse. And that should be a near 420 to something vote. That should have been a near unanimous vote condemning Gosar. Instead, it's 223 to 207. And now with Rittenhouse, we got people in Congress trying to honor Rittenhouse, trying to make him into some kind of right-wing prop, saying, hey, well, we want to make him an intern. All this while we have the January 6th controversy still to contend with. I mean, some people have gone to jail, and some people say, oh, isn't it too bad that the QAnon shaman, Jacob Chansley, gets 41 months in prison? No, it's not too bad. He's lucky it's only 41. But how about the real perps they're ignoring Congress, ignoring the subpoena, not coming in? Steve Bannon, all the others who've been subpoenaed, Michael Flynn. When are they going to come in and say what they did? So this is America, right? Vigilantism dead? Not by a long shot. We still got some hope. We got the Arbery trial the remarks, closing arguments happening now or today. The prosecutor, she's good. She said, the citizens arresting, you can't arrest anyone unless you see a crime committed. It is not a crime to be running. Oh, they think do they have probable cause to think that is running away? So that makes him guilty? No, you can run. He was jogging. But what was the probable cause based on? A stereotype? Jogging while black? Walking through a gated community while black? The Ahmaud Arbery trial. That's the hope that if we get a guilty verdict against the three men who are accused in Arbery's murder, maybe that'll give us a sense, give us something to be thankful for. A guilty verdict that would temper the enthusiasm of a kind of reckless vigilantism in America. You know, given the state of our nation, that would not be a small thing. But I think a lot right now, I mean, we could wait for the jury's verdict in Arbery. But what can we do now for Rittenhouse? Rittenhouse is already choosing sides. He's already like going on Fox News, being coddled by Tucker Carlson. I just think that all the rest of us should reach out to him too and let him know that if he wants to protect America, truly protect America, we should be able to do that together. You know, because America is us, you know, Black, Indigenous, people of color, Asian Americans, Filipinos. That's the one true America. It's all of us. We could defend it together. He's young enough. Maybe he'll come to his senses. But it takes those of us who may appear to be on the other side to reach out and let him know that we don't have to fear each other. And that's kind of like the America we're in. I mean, I was thinking about Rittenhouse, thinking about, you know, the repercussions of Rittenhouse, and then the Waukesha event on Main Street happened. It just makes me wonder, where is America going? You know, and today, if you're of a certain age, you know that this is November 22nd. It's JFK Day. JFK Assassination Day. November 22nd, 1963. And I remember where I was. I was scared for the country. And all throughout my life, every November 22nd, I think it wasn't until maybe, I know, it's been 58 years, but maybe just the last 10 when we've kind of stopped obsessing about JFK a little bit. And we've stopped. I mean, I haven't heard anyone mention it once on any of the news programs that I listen to. And it's because, hey, look, there's a lot of news. Some stations are going wall to wall on Arbery, wall to wall on, Rittenhouse is no more, but there's Arbery. There's also Joe Biden made news. He reappointed Jerome Powell, to the Fed. We're talking about the economy. There's stuff to talk about. There's real news happening. And then, of course, there's Waukesha. So no president's dead, but 5 innocent people on Main Street, America. That's what we're talking about on the 58th anniversary of JFK's assassination. It's almost like, when the assassination happened as a kid now, my parents were immigrants. And even though I was born here, I'm basically an immigrant too. I mean, they're they take the lead until I take the lead. And I was following them, and they were just like, JFK was the favorite of minorities. He was the hope. And I know that for some people in the community, in the Asian American, the Filipino community, I know in the Hispanic community, and probably also the Black community, something died. I mean, something in us died when we saw the president get taken down. And there was an uncertainty. My parents really didn't express it, but I could sense their feeling of helplessness. I was just 8, just thinking, well, we'll get through this. And we do. We did. And we'll do now. But there's a little of that feeling that I felt when I was 8. I feel that now, in 2021. Where's our country going? Where's our direction? Waukesha, Kenosha, all of us. Well, something to think about on the week we give thanks, because it is the week we give thanks. And I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that we'll come together. I mean, are you getting together with family? Getting together with family and friends? Because I'm still Zooming. Still Zooming. In fact, Thursday, I'll have a story time show. So look for that. I'll tell some stories, or a story, Filipino family. I'm inviting my friend Eleanor Clement Glass, talking about her Filipino bride story. And Julian Simeon, another storyteller. We're going to tell Filipino stories. That's all coming up on Thursday. So I hope you can join us on Thursday. And then I'll put it out there and you'll see it on the Emil Guillermo YouTube channels. Stories that you would tell people during family dinners. Stories about the family. Stories about each other, ourselves. Some of them will be funny. And some of them will be, well, not sad. But they'll be engaging. So that's coming up on Thursday with some repeats over the long weekend. All right, so that's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed our program. see the replay of this on amok.com later. Follow my columns on the ALDEF blog, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, aldef.org/blog. Also catch today's column, which includes the Filipino alderman, Angelito Tenorio, on inquirer.net, inquirer.net. Thank you for being part of this program. You know, I like to say, be here, bang the gong now. You can watch it live on emilguillermo.media on Facebook or on Facebook Watch. And, 2 to 5 p.m. Pacific live. That's when we're here. So, thank you very much. Let's see. I have the wrong number up on this one. This was, by the way, not show 184. This was show 185. Show 185, the Simu Liu Bowen Yang congratulatory firster show. And also, really, congratulations to SNL for getting us right. For hiring Bowen Yang after dumping Shane Gillis. And then, I guess it really didn't take much guts to hire Simu Liu to host. I mean, Simu Liu, number one movie in the world for a couple weeks. Come on. All right, but they did it. So all right, a reluctant congrats to SNL for allowing the first, for enabling Asian American first. Thank you for joining us. If you are a regular member of our show, if you catch us from time, and you get this far in, this is when I go into meditative mode. And this is where I give you a sense of, I try to enable your power. I try to say, hey, come on. You belong. You're worthy. This is you. You can do it. Give yourself an elbow hug. Hey, by the way, 2 Rhodes Scholars from Harvard, Asian American. I mention that only because a lot of people say, oh, Asian Americans are discriminated against. Well, here's this most competitive thing, and 2 of the winners are Asian Americans. Where is the discrimination? Just a reminder, that case is ongoing. The Supreme Court may come up with that, or may address that. But the main thing is, we belong. We belong. All right. That said, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Till tomorrow, Emil Guillermo, Mahal Kita.